Greetings, everyone. My name is Peter Young, and I'm one of the volunteer team of Yale alumni who have been putting on these Yale career panels now since the beginning of 2012. We started out thinking we'd only do one or two. Turned out, though, that this program really serves a very good purpose of helping people make career decisions with very balanced, candid information. This is the 59th of this series over the years, and we've gone through so many different professions, whether it's investment banking or drama and film or the arts and so forth. They can be, you can go to yalecareerpanels.com if you want to see the recordings of these panels. In fact, we recorded just about all of them, so it gives you a chance to go and listen to other different professions. And it really just started because I think the number of the founders really felt that when they recruited at Yale, that one of the biggest problems was that students often, no matter how smart they were, had very distorted information about professions, particularly the ones that have a lot of TV shows. I got to tell you, people thought you go to law school and you could solve a case every 10 minutes, or at least between commercials, right? So the benefit of this is not so much to try to persuade people not to go into a profession or to go into it, but rather allow them to make an intelligent decision based on candid information. I am very, very pleased to have the four panelists today. I want to say we recruited some new members of the core team, volunteers, and Vivian Lin made the mistake of raising her hand and wishing to volunteer. So now she's stuck as a part of the volunteer group to put these on. And to be honest, she got two out of the three other panelists other than herself. So she's been already shown that she's a big contributor. So we're looking forward to the future ones that she might help put together. This process is going to be very straightforward. I have a set of questions that are going to guide the panelists through, and they can speak or not speak as they wish. But the four people on the screen, Abby Bloom is the adjunct professor at the University of Sydney in Public Health and University of Technology and Business, and she's a graduate, 2 degrees from Yale. Jeffrey Koplan is a vice president for global health and principal investigator for the Global Health Institute and the China Tobacco Control Partnership, and is a Yale graduate. Professor Vivian Lin is an executive associate dean and professor of public health practice at LKS Faculty of Medicine, University of Hong Kong, and she's a Yale graduate. And Peter Suwondo is a fourth-year medical student, epidemiologist, and health policy researcher at Columbia University. We'll forgive him for that, but he graduated from Yale in undergraduate and a master's in public health. So we have all Yale graduates of some sort and trying to give back to the community. So with that, what I'd like to do is start out and just ask each of the panelists just to take a minute and tell the audience what do you do and how your career connects with today's career panel on global health. So in no particular order, I guess I'll do it in the order of how you appear on my screen. So Vivian, you want to start? Take a minute and describe.
Sure. I got involved with the WHO actually when I was in my 20s, and then involved with the World Bank in my 30s and 40s. And that time I was also involved with the bilateral development assistance program from Australia and from the UK. And then with a whole range of professional organizations and universities, eventually in my 50s, I became the Director of Health Systems in the Western Pacific region of the WHO. And now while at the University of Hong Kong, I continue to be involved with a range of engagements in global health, ranging from, again, the WHO to various Lancet commissions. So it's been a great ride.
So Vivian, I think it's safe to say that you have a little bit of involvement with global health, I would think, right?
Yeah.
All right. The next one is Jeff. Can you take a minute and describe your background and connection with public health, global health?
Sure. I've spent a better part of probably close to 60 years doing public health, occasionally realizing it was public health, other times just doing what seemed like the right thing to do. I went to Yale, was an English major, if you asked me to define epidemiology or public health, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about. But I became more and more interested in basically dealing with populations and preventing illness rather than just treating it. And that's basically been the touchstone for my whole career, which has included stints with WHO, with the World Bank, working with Vivian on a range of projects, spending a good chunk of my time in China. I went from one thing to another, but loving each thing until I got to the next one. And it's been an extraordinarily rewarding career. And I couldn't have chosen better for myself.
Fantastic. Next, Abby.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank my, I can't say old colleague, but Vivian, and also my new colleague, Peter, for the opportunity to speak today. My career in global health started in 1975 when a group of Yale undergraduates mobilized the administration demanding a course in global health. None had been given before, and consequently, we had to start from scratch. It was an incredible opportunity, a little bit scary, but it was so successful that it was repeated again the following year when I started my 10-year career in foreign aid health side, which included Washington and Panama. When I relocated to Australia, I'll say I went domestic, but not entirely, because I continued to advise the Australian government, UNICEF, World Bank, IFC, et cetera, et cetera. I had a double career in innovation and technology commercialization, which started in the late 90s. And things moved on so that eventually, and today, my professional career is as a paid board member and investor in technology companies. The overlap is that a lot of the things that I look at are public health related or life-saving devices. And at the moment, I'm actually looking at distribution channels and opportunity in China and India. Thank you.
By the way, Abby doesn't have her background is not that she's in a fancy office. She is at an airport, and for her, I will make sure that you won't be
don't miss my flight.
But she has a flight, so the time is such that she'll have to leave before before the end of this. However, if say Vivian is speaking and Abby takes off, it is not because she's not interested in what Vivian is saying, right? Peter, you're next.
Sure, thanks so much. I think I'm by far the most junior member of the panel, so hopefully can provide some perspectives from our recent graduates or younger students as well. I graduated from Yale College in 2016, potentially benefited from some of the groundwork that Abby laid in terms of the undergraduate coursework in global health that got me very interested in the field. Got involved in some epidemiological field research as an undergraduate, continued that in my time with the School of Public Health as well. After graduation, I spent a couple years working at CDC, what was then called the Center for Global Health, on our strategic partnerships and planning team. Also spent a little bit of time as well after that at the U.S. Agency for International Development, working on malaria control strategy. Between those different stints, I've also done a little bit of epidemiological research and consulting for the private sector, And more recently, for a couple different reasons that I'm happy to talk about, also decided that I wanted a clinical aspect to some of my work in global health. And so, as mentioned, I decided to pursue medical school, and I'm now wrapping that up as a fourth year at Columbia University.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, it is good to have a younger person on, because us old folkies don't necessarily understand how the world looks from the point of view of people your age. So, we're actually very glad that you're on this panel. You know, this panel, over all the different professions that we have featured, some have been easy because they're very narrow, right? They're very narrow, and there may be some variations. This one is probably the most challenging because there's so many different segments and careers in it. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't have had this panel, but it just means we have to be thoughtful about how we do this. So I'd like to start out and just ask our panelists, when you think about global health, in terms of careers, right? In terms of careers, what would be the major segments that you think are worth, citing in the industry from the point of view of career opportunities, right? And I'm not going to direct this to anyone. Whoever wants to take a stab at it, please do so.
I'll jump in. When I think about the career paths people choose, they can be divided into international organizations, sort of in the international relations and diplomacy side of things. They could be involved in programs and projects, and that's often development assistance, more on the ground. They can be involved in humanitarian and emergency response, often through international, non-government organizations. They can be involved in research and development, whether that's biomedical or public health or university or industry. There seems to be an increasing number of people with legal backgrounds who are moving into all different aspects and settings. And of course, there's also philanthropy. So people who like to give money away and work in philanthropy. So they're the things that come to my mind in terms of how I see different people's career paths.
Peter, if you're going to go through every segment of public health, you're going to be pretty busy, I think, right? But you're the only one who has a chance of maybe doing that. Any other comments from any of the other panelists about what are the key segments that people should think about from the point of view of careers?
I don't have anything to add to what Vivian has suggested. And for those listening or watching this, I think that segmentation is a really good place to start in terms of exploring what fits best for you, your aspirations, your temperament, your personality. But I also want to call Peter out for the wide range of segments of public health at his very young age he has already covered.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's only 13, so he's doing quite well. Well, let's switch gears, because I do think Vivian did a very nice job of segmenting, right? So this is not something that everyone has to say something. This next question is, where are these major professional segments heading, good and bad? And the reason why we say that is, in any one profession, there are things that are improving and things that are getting worse. I mean, for example, being a doctor, technologies help doctors do lots of things that otherwise couldn't do. On the other hand, the days of the independent doctor practicing his office are really over, and doctors increasingly are being pushed to work for corporations or hospitals, which most doctors don't love, right? So within professions, there are good things and bad things happening. Could you, the three, four of you, really talk about some of the things that you think relevant, again, for people making career decisions, that are either good or bad in terms of where things are headed trend-wise?
I'm happy to start if everyone's okay with that. Look, to me, the major transformative trend, and I think it's for good, is the digitization. And I mean digitization and IoT basis for health and healthcare. It gets at access, at equity, and I think what I would say is that if there's one area that isn't possibly normally considered to be core for a career in global health, just understanding, I think that this good trend in digitization, guided surgery from afar, consultations, last mile drone delivery of medications. It's moving very quickly, and that's the one I would flag.
Jeff, you had your hand up, so you're next. Oh, he's frozen and now he's disappeared. Okay, all right. There we go. Jeff, can you unmute yourself?
Done.
Yeah, you had your hand up, so I think you were going to say something.
I think a disturbing factor that's occurred that earlier in my own career in public health really was not prominent has been the downgrading by the public of science in general, scientific institutions underneath that, and then individual scientists below that. And this seemingly got a boost in energy from the pandemic, probably the opposite of what you would think and hope. And Peter's entering what will be a long and satisfying career, but he'll also have to be dealing with folks whose seeming objectives do not coincide with most of us who have been in public health for their whole careers.
You know, there's an obligatory question these days that's starting from November of last year, which is, what impact is AI going to have on global health jobs? Because that's one of the big debates. And as it's accepted, it's going to have an impact, but it'd be very interesting in your thoughts on what's going to help and what's going to hurt different parts of the profession. Okay, Abby, go ahead.
I'm going to ask for a license. Before I answer that question, I'm going to say something that maybe sound counter to what Peter just said. I serve on quite a number of boards, each of which has something to do with health, public health, social impact. Nothing elevated my stature greater than COVID-19, when suddenly everybody knew what me as an epidemiologist does, particularly the quantitative capacity that I have, and people are actually able to pronounce it. So I agree with what Peter was saying. I don't want to disagree with it, but COVID-19 really provided an opportunity for epidemiologists to shine and to demonstrate that this is not some kind of rubbish administrative profession. In terms of AI, I think that it has a lot of prospect, and it also has a lot of downside, as we know. It's the misinformation. It's a continuous loop of particularly non-generative AI, just rehashing things that are out of date or are scientifically erroneous. So, but again, as my comments about digitization, I think it's really important to keep an eye on it. I recently put myself through a 3-day immersive on AI where I actually had to do it, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, that's right. Peter, I'm going to call on you because you're the youngest one, and so therefore you have the most to gain or lose based on AI. So depending upon what you do. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the AI field, and you certainly, I think it's a tool that's going to really empower people who know how to use it. Just playing around like as a medical student with ChatGPT and AI. I mean, the sort of learning and pedagogical uses are just absolutely incredible. And so hopefully there's a lot of things that I think can be really automated. But it's kind of impressive in terms of sort of the more general picture questions. You can ask AI as well in terms of strategy development, sort of higher picture questions might have some kind of implication for fields like global health consulting, for example. But I don't really know any more than the rest of us, I think, have a crystal ball to be able to see where it's going to take the field.
Theoretically, though, AI should be helpful in public health just because there's a lot of data in public health, and AI is good at analyzing data and providing insights, presumably if the data is good, right? But I think a lot of public health data is actually pretty good. Vivian, you were raising your hand?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to pick up on the COVID angle because, I mean, what we did see during COVID was the enormously rapid connections that scientists made and help us move forward. Also, the variety of modeling that was actually going on all over the place. So that really speaks to, I think, some extremely good training and research that has happened. By the same token, we had probably as many different responses as we have countries in the world. And the issues, the geopolitics became, quite prominent. So I think there is a real challenge in terms of, on the one hand, the scientific specialization that has been happening increasingly in science, which includes public health. At the same time, the need for people to actually be able to see the whole and bring pieces together, work across disciplines, translate the knowledge into policy, be able to handle the politics. So public health has always been the art and the science. And I think there's probably a bit more the art and the humanities that AI is not quite ready to deal with.
Yeah. Anyway, at least my impression, though, is, as you said, Vivian, that public health is a multidisciplinary field. In other words, problems are best solved with people who have skills, or work with people who have skills across different things, whether it's being a doctor and, but also a public health administrator, or whatever. Peter, you raised your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to build on some of these comments that have been made about the effect of COVID on the field as well. I think, something that we're all cognizant of in public health or global health is really this cycle of sort of boom and bust with every emergency that happens in the field, and sort of the associated attention and funding that comes along with that. Obviously that's really transformed the amount of resources going towards a lot of global health activities. And, I think in the wake of that, there's always sort of reimagining of like the global architecture, the governance. You see that reflected in a lot of changes with, at the federal level, with the US government, whole new bureau at the State Department sort of being elevated to focus on global health security, or differences in the National Security Council. So I think it's certainly a time, like, for the field in general, where there's a lot of opportunity to sort of step in and have an important impact for people who are going to enter the global health space. But I think certainly a lot of people are concerned as well about maintaining that momentum, dwindling resources, sort of as you enter that period where everyone gets a little bit of amnesia about the recent history of these emergencies.
Abby? You're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. It's the humans are faster than computers. I want to pick up on Peter's comments, and for those who are watching this, one of the most valuable things I did as an undergraduate was to study politics and anthropology, and both of which have been extremely helpful throughout my entire career. Politics, because of the policy side and understanding some of the things that Peter and also Vivian remarked on earlier, and the anthropology side because of what is now known as the user experience. That is the capacity at any given time to stand in the shoes of the individual who's meant to be benefiting from what you're doing. So having spent 6 years in charge of global health policy for USAID, Peter, the younger Peter, all of that came in extremely handy.
Yeah. And I guess one of the messages here is, for those of you in the audience, don't be afraid of spending part of your time studying something else. because I think it's true across many professions. I mean, my wife is a professor, and until a year ago was a dean at the largest graduate school for about 10 years. And part of what they've been trying to do is solve problems multidisciplinary, like cybersecurity. It's not just an engineering problem. It's not just a policy problem. It's a combined. So people should not be afraid. Jeff, any comments on, on this topic?
No, but I guess I think that the learning process is rather incomplete for a large group of elected officials, that having experienced a pandemic with many, many deaths and great destruction, and lots of talk about how it was important to invest in this stuff, that investment has not occurred and is likely to not continue to be. So I'm delighted with the enthusiasm and optimism shown by my thorough panelists, but I am very concerned about the next pandemic and what we've learned from the most recent one.
Yeah, I share your concern. It's a broader question. Pretty much every profession we featured has had some segments that are growing faster than others and some that are declining. Whether you talk about law or investment banking, whatever, they all have that kind of dynamic. As you think about public health, are there some examples of segments that you think are going to grow particularly fast, which is relevant to a career decision? And are there any that you think that actually might be in the decline? And so unless you just love it, you want to think twice about whether to be in it. See, I didn't promise to stick to all the questions, and now I've stumped you all.
I mean, I think that over the last, 25 years, with the various reviews of public health workforce and public health curriculum, what has probably really grown is the health informatics field. And of course, that, has contributed to all as part of our previous conversation about AI. And so big data analytics will continue to be hugely important, and modeling, but not just epidemiological, but bring economics and epidemiology together, for instance, and doing a whole range of scenarios. So I think those are possibly some of the areas that are, really growing from a technical viewpoint. There's always going to be a need for people who can do field epidemiology, because we will just continue to have outbreaks, and every country, has a need for that. And there's probably an insufficient supply globally. So that's, I think, very much at the core. I would like to think that the policy dimensions will become more important, but that's just because I do policy.
You have a vested interest in saying it's growing. That's right. Abby?
Yes, thank you. Look, I'm going to share some pessimism with the other Peter. I'm actually concerned about a possible contraction of government budgets allocated to health around the world. And I say that because things are looking pretty uncertain globally in terms of macroeconomics for many reasons. And certainly one of the things that we've seen here in Australia is the government over a long period reducing its allocation of funding to all forms of foreign aid, including global health. And I don't see any sign that it's going to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, the implications of that is that there may be fewer jobs in that sphere that is specifically project management, execution, evaluation, etc.
Yeah, because those are they're government funded programs, right? Exactly. Now, every profession has its myths versus realities, every single one. And I was joking about the legal, where the myth is you solve a case between every commercial and that sort of thing. What are the myths? What are some of the myths that you think the audience really should know about? I know, Vivian, you can leap over building with a single bound, and your only weakness is kryptonite. But putting that aside, right, for the profession, what are the things that are myths that may be important to puncture, right?
Well, I think probably, some people see global health perhaps as quite glamorous, a lot of travel, coming into contact with lots of different cultures, tasting interesting food, it's a lot of fun. But on the other hand, I think the travel can be exhausting. There are health risks that come with it. For people, the juggling of domestic life and family life with international work can be challenging. You can have long and odd hours of having to, reconnect with Washington, D.C. or New York or wherever from, 12 or more hours apart from that time zone. So that's probably, just breaking some of the myths. But obviously there's a lot of other things which more than make up for that.
By the way, the example that most people use as the extreme in terms of myths is forensic science, because you have all these TV shows, Bones, NCIS, and so forth. And they're just all these young kids going to study forensic science. And I just wish they would first go through the New York Police Department, forensic department first. There's just not a whole lot of beautiful LED screens and everything else, and everybody wearing, fancy clothes. But that's life. So it's I think the key for you who are the attendees, it's your responsibility to try to see through myths that may actually mislead you, right? Fortunately, I think public health, there's fewer myths, but there still are some.
Peter, you may be frozen now. I'm not sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Peter, can you hear me okay?
All right. Both Peters can hear you.
Vivian took the word glamour right out of my mouth, but maybe that's an indication of how close we are as friends and colleagues. Look, in hindsight, we sometimes laugh over some of the things, like when my experience of being plunked down in the middle of coca growing rural areas of Peru, where the only safe thing to brush my teeth with was orange soda, which in hindsight is funny, but also highlights that there are sometimes elements of external danger in these jobs. Your parents may worry about you when you're in certain situations. I've found myself being driven into a city where there are machine gun guards everywhere.
You're talking about New York, right?
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. So it's to someone like us, it's not daunting. It just comes with it. But I have to say that if our parents would have known all the details, they would have been concerned about the level of personal danger. And I have to say I'm very fortunate in that in decades of work, I haven't had any personal injury of any kind, but it is there.
Yeah, that's right. And certainly one thing is it's not a profession in general where you're going to get rich, right? In general, right? But if that's your objective, then then it's probably you're going to be disappointed. Jeff.
Just to build on what Abby and both Peters have said, and Vivian, the one myth is that you can get an education and a degree, and that actually prepares you for something. And my perspective is it prepares you to only begin to touch on what you don't know and need to know. So global health, when you put a big project together in the field, you need a legal mind, particularly on issues such as women's issues in the society, use of medications, a wide range of things. You need the political science and all of the social sciences, anthropology to provide cultural context to what you're working on. One of our major projects has a divinity degree and a master's in public health, and that combination has proven to be very helpful in working with religious groups where we're trying to get a projects going, and their partnership in them is imperative. Peter's the closest one, I guess, unless Vivian's planning on getting another degree soon, but Peter's going to add, I think you're reacting in many ways, both in a very rational and thoughtful manner. Adding the P&S degree, but more important, what you've learned in it, will set you up better for whatever you're going to do next. Will make it more likely that you can take a leadership role in that, and just offers a medical context, which is not the only one you want to have or need, but it's a very valuable thing, and it'll be useful to you every day of your career.
I have a question for the other Peter, but before that, I just want to tell one short story, and that is a close friend of mine, Yale graduate, retired as a very respected pediatric surgeon. He spent most of his career at Mount Sinai and so forth. And after he retired, he's getting a master's in public health. So and it's going to do so. It's you could do it at any point in your career if you feel very, very strongly about it. So Peter, I have a question for you that's unique to you, and that is, for your classmates who are in public health, right? What seems to be the sentiment of those? Because this is a younger group, right? What is their sentiment? What seems to be driving their interest in where they're pointing their careers?
Sure, great question. I think off the top of my head, some of the folks that I graduated with from the School of Public Health, a fair number of them are working for international organizations and sort of the humanitarian relief space, MSF, working on that sort of very mission-driven work. A number of them are also working for funders, whether that be the U.S. Agency for International Development or other charity organizations. I think increasingly what a lot of students are really feeling is that they want to be part of an organization that has a mission that's really aligned to their values, and sometimes that's taking a lot more precedence, I think, than considerations like their compensation or just sort of thinking about the overall experience that they might have in some of these early roles that they're taking out of undergrad or graduate school. But I haven't seen a lot of folks sort of exiting the public health space despite all these challenges around COVID or sort of all that related controversy and sort of the difficulty that so many public and global health workers have been subjected to during that time. And so I think that speaks positively to sort of the motivations a lot of folks have in the field, as well as sort of these people are going to stay for the long term.
Oh, well, that's really great to hear, because it's the young folks who are really going to make a difference over the next 20, 30 years, not those of us who are, shall we say, closer to retirement than you are. related to this question is this, what type, and it's a little bit a tough question because there's so many segments of public health, but a global pub, but what are the characteristics of people who tend to do well? It's a little bit unfair because there's so many different types of jobs, but I'll give you an example. I run an investment bank, and I'll tell you, if you're not on the brokerage side, there are certain characteristics that are keys to being successful. You have to be analytical. You have to have a long attention span because you don't do things that get finished in 5 minutes and so forth. So there are some basic traits that you can identify in people that will tell you whether they're just not going to make it or whether they at least, could be successful. Do you sense any of that? Are there some characteristics of people which are kind of leading indicators that they would do well in global public health? Jeff?
Yeah, I'll give that a shot. It reads like a handbook for becoming an Eagle Scout. Yes, the first words out of your mouth were being analytic, and I'd say those are the first things I would put out of someone who wanted to pursue a career in public health or global health. However, it doesn't end there. It only begins there. Quantitative, scientific in their approach to what they know, what they don't know, what needs to be done, what's being done or hasn't been done. All the human skills, compassionate, understanding, a good listener. And I'm sure you get that in your clinical training, but that's a hard skill and one that's needed and not as common as we like to have it. Those that don't do so well already know everything, so that that learning element is not necessarily there. Arrogance is not a good trait to have as you go forth in the world at large. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and it's trying to be all things to all people, but that's better than not trying to be all things to all people.
Well, now, we've all read about how first, everybody talked about IQ, and then they started talking about EQ, right? Which actually was, I guess, invented by Peter Salovey, right? I guess the emotional intelligence. And now they have LQ, which is love for the profession, right? So you touched on, some of those as characteristics, because of the nature of the job, right?
Could I weigh in for
Sure,
with a few additional things, if I might? Yeah, look, this is my personal view, but I think that qualitative skills need to complement quantitative skills, and I think both are really important. At some point when I was in USAID and negotiating things, I realized that I could improve my skills, and I actually put myself, I think I was probably the first person in the State Department to take Harvard's course in negotiation, because in so many of the things that I was doing, I felt that I had one hand behind my back.
Yes.
Right. I won't give you the specifics. A couple of other things. If you are thinking you want to do field work, it helps to have both physical resilience and emotional resilience. And the need for that is heightened by something that I call him the younger Peter, or the next gen Peter, said, which is that
No, you have to refer to him as the handsome Peter.
The handsome Peter, or
like the 13-year-old.
the
handsome 13-year-old, right?
The future of global health.
Right.
If when you're in a field where you are wedded to the mission and you're especially passionate, it's sometimes hard to take setbacks, let alone failures. And so I think that a really good self-understanding, emotional regulation, a whole bunch of other things are important. And I want to say one other thing, which is in field work, you're very often working with people who, or most often, do not speak your language and you do not speak theirs. So you have to have the ability to communicate in a way that enables them to capture the essence of what you're saying. And I deliberately just walked the talk just now to illustrate that my normal way as a New York Australian of speaking and communicating is very different from what I would be doing if I was in a bicultural, multilingual setting. Thank you.
By the way, my wife, when we got married, I went to Harvard Business School and we got married, and she says, I'm going to try to see whether I can fix your personality and try to get that Harvard Business School A-type personality, out of you. Well, 35 years later, I asked her for a 35th anniversary. I said, how are you doing? She says, not very well. So I said, good news, because we're both going to live a long time. So you've got some time. She says, not enough time. So, but by the way, there is a direct quote from Warren Buffett. And he every once in a while, people ask him, what's a key to success? And one of them, he says, if after a meeting you have, if you found that they've asked, that you haven't asked 2 questions for every question that the other person asks, you may have failed, because it means you're not listening, right? Now, Abby is, I think, disappeared because I think she's gone to her gate. I think that's right. But the timing is pretty good because we now have, I know, Vivian, you have a question, but we are going to move to the Q&A. And those of you who have questions, just type them into the Q&A or raise your hand. But Vivian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to build on that in terms of this, who's happy and who's not happy. And I think what Peter is saying about his generation of people who are value driven, I think that's a really important part, that people stay in the field because they feel like they're making a difference. But the flip side of that is, as Abby said, you've got to be able to handle setback, uncertainties, ambiguities, not being in control. So if you were, wanting to get a result really quickly, you get very frustrated. If you want to see the world exactly how you planned it, you're going to get frustrated. But if you have a commitment to outcomes and you enjoy complex problem solving in intensive bursts and working through issues and trying to find solutions, trying to work with people, then, and a sense of working with people together to achieve shared outcomes, I think those are the really happiest people in the field.
Yeah, and the reality is, though, in public health, I think it's safe to say that compared to some other professions, your ability to have tight control everything around you is less, right? Yeah. You have to work more with people and so forth. So I think that's an important consideration. Do we have any questions from the audience? If so, please use the Q&A chat function. Or raise your hand, and we will acknowledge. If we don't get any questions, I'll continue to ask questions of the panelists. Any questions that we have from people? Oh, there we go, Clara. All right, I'm going to allow you to talk. Okay, go ahead, Clara. Oh, wow. Clara, is that a real picture of you from where you're broadcasting?
I'm not sure what picture I have. Maybe it's rock climbing.
Rock climbing,
but
right.
Yeah, so I just want to let you know the chat is disabled, but so maybe you can enable it for participants.
No, that's all right. We're listening to you now, so.
Okay, so just a little bit of background. I actually retired at 40. I rock climbed for about 5 years full time, and then I got a little bored, so I came back to work. So I've been around the block a little bit, so I'm a little bit maybe not the same audience as most of the other participants, but I wanted to ask you your thoughts on sort of what I've seen time and again throughout my career. The one thing that's never changed is that priorities really shift and funding is really difficult. And so my early career, we had funding from USAID, and then they changed their priorities inexplicably. I'm now with a 5-person nonprofit, which was funded by the Gates Foundation, who then decided they're no longer going to be interested in reproductive health. Never in my career did I think a stalwart program like PEPFAR would be used as political football, but we see that even on the edge of being canceled. And so this is something that I'm lucky that I'm retired and I'm now working for fun.
Clara,
And
I'm going to interrupt and ask, could you form your question in the form of a question?
Yeah, so how can we navigate all of these funding uncertainties? Because normally we're not providing a product that's monetized, so there's no revenue coming back in, and we're really subject to the whims of shifting priorities, governments, funders, foundations.
Okay. So how do you
navigate
maneuver around?
that?
So the question is, how do you move around this issue of shifting funding? Jeff? Oh, no, you're muted. Yeah, you unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think one, you want to do high quality work so that when you can't compete to other entities that are trying to occupy the same space, you can either do it together or you can stand a chance of getting support. You can work for a government agency. I spent 26 years at the CDC, and you don't always get the funding you want there or at other places, but it's enough to begin the task or to do some version of the tasks. So I think we all want more funding to get our jobs done, but there are groups out there like the Gates Foundation and other bodies where you can apply, compete for it, and end up successful in that realm. Not all the time, but enough to keep one at it.
Vivian or Peter, any comments on this issue of, can you anticipate funding changes, and then, what do you do about it?
Look, I think you have to be able to read the public sector climate and try to anticipate the issues. Ideology does matter. One government might be really interested in equity and social determinants of health. Another one might be only interested in diet and physical activity and nothing else. So being able to kind of understand where decision makers come from, I think is important in anticipating. But I think also, philanthropy can get around quite a lot of the public sector constraints. So being able to establish good relationships and understand what's driving those interests and decisions that's also another important thing to do.
Normally at the beginning of these, I make the following comment, but it's actually relevant to this question, which is, more stability. If you go to large, if you work for the World Bank, they're not going to shut it down. On the other hand, if you work for a smaller nonprofit, there's a much greater chance about that, but also it's a different kind of work experience. So the comment I generally make, which is agnostic to this particular panel, is these panels could be very helpful in terms of helping you understand different nuances about different professions, but you got to start out with a good understanding of yourself. And I strongly encourage all of you, if you're early in your career, to do an objective assessment of yourself, and not just what you're good at, not good at, but your temperament. Do you like being outside? Is money important to you? Do you hate politics? In which case you shouldn't work for a large, organization, et cetera, et cetera. Do a good job of self-assessment, but also get help from friends who know you, but are willing to be honest with you about what you're good at, not good, or just what you are. Because at the end of the day, you can have all the perfect information about public health, but if you don't have a good sense about yourself, you're not going to be able to figure out whether it's a good match or not. Peter, do you have any comments about what she said about anticipating where organizations could be financially?
Yeah, I mean, I think Clara raised a really important challenge that so many organizations are facing all the time in public and in global health. I don't know that I have much more to add apart from what Vivian and Jeff already mentioned. But I'll just say that I think we absolutely need more voices in Washington and working directly with policymakers to not just respond to those shifting priorities, but to actually help set them. And so, I think a lot of folks in Washington benefit from having some of the program level expertise to be able to make those arguments. And as mentioned, not just respond to, but help set those specific priorities.
Yeah, I have one last question for you, which I put off for the Q&A, and that is, if you don't retire with a gold watch and spend your entire career in public health, what are the exit ramps and exit routes? And maybe it is that no one ever retires from public health. If that's the case, please say that. But certainly, for example, law, people, just by the nature of the profession, people end up doing a whole variety of other things. So if you, from your observation, thinking about all the people who've been in public health, for those who didn't stay until they retired in public health, what did they end up doing?
Well, I think, Peter, your comment about knowing yourself is really, really important, because I think, the people who leave often, I mean, there may be a push factor or there may be a pull factor. And if the temperament was unsuited in the first place, that's clearly one reason why people might leave. But a lot of the skill sets you develop in global health is applicable domestically. A lot of the skill sets you develop in public health generally is applicable to public policy generally. So there's actually, quite a lot of opportunities. Now, quite often also people might shift in between doing, teaching and research and the academic side versus being in the field, doing consultancy work for non-government organization. So really, there's really a wide variety of ways in which public health and global health skills can be actually applied.
Jeff, you had your hand up?
I think it's been covered. Thank you.
Oh, been covered? Yeah, okay. And is there a tendency, it's interesting because if you look at people who go from the private sector to the public sector, so forth, by profession, it can vary. I mean, there's some professions where mostly it's people going from the private and then ending up in the public sector, et cetera. Any observations with regard to public health, whether, and like medical profession, a lot of doctors end up going into the drug industry, et cetera, administration, from being, doctors. So any comments on that in terms of sort of how the careers tend to flow across the public-private line? I've stumped the panel. I get a gold star. Okay, well, we're gonna end because we like to.
People do go private from public.
Yeah.
But I think those who stay in the field tend to stay more in the public sector, albeit in very different settings. Of course, it depends on how you classify universities as to whether they're private or not, but I'm thinking they have a public mission.
So we pride ourselves on starting on time and ending on time, and we have about 1 or 2 minutes left. And this was not on the list of questions, but I'd like each of you to say, if there's a takeaway, what word would you use as a takeaway for the audience? Just a one word or 2 words, maximum 2 words, that you want them to walk away with.
I'd say, from my personal feeling about public health, it's opportunities and outcomes. So the point of, at the end of your career, you can look back and say, I didn't get everything right, and there were things I missed, but on the whole, I've left the world a better place. And by world, it may be just a very small piece of the world, but that you can walk away proud of what you've done and not worry about the money you could have earned if you had only gone to any one of a number of other places. So if you're looking for professional gratification, public health is the way to go.
Okay, Peter,
Sure.
1 or 2 words, and the word "and" doesn't count. So Jeff met the rule because he had 3 words, but the 1 word was "and." So he met the criteria.
I would say self-knowledge. We were talking about that a little bit before, and sort of how that shapes what makes for a meaningful and fulfilling career. I think that's really applicable in global health, and having a sense of your values, and as well as whether you will really succeed in environments that are often very challenging, where the rules aren't clear, where the role is not well defined. But if that's something that sounds exciting to you, if that sounds like the missions of the field are aligned with your values, and it's a heck of a place to be, and exciting time to do it.
Vivian, your takeaway?
A lifelong learning journey.
Oh, that's more than 2 words. All right, okay. Well, we'll take the learning journey. Oh, well, I don't know. Which of the 3 words can we choose? 2 of them, right? But anyway, continue.
Lifelong is 1 word.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay. Yeah. So I want to thank this panel. I would thank Abby, but she's on a plane now. And I want to thank you for really sharing some great insights with the audience. And it's a tough profession to try to, to generalize about. It is really tough because it's so segmented and so forth. But I think you did a good job. And again, the takeaway here is 1, listen to what these experienced people and younger experienced people have to say, and be honest with yourself about your needs, interests, and see whether you can match up properly. Data is very important, but I'll end with 1 short humorous story. So with our business school, in the between the first, second years, they offer a self-assessment set test where you answer like 600 questions, and then they correlate it with the answers that dozens and dozens and dozens of professions have. The theory being, if your answers are very, very similar to the answers of someone in a particular profession, that's a good profession for you. So I answered the 600 questions, and they called me a week later, said, "Mr. Young, we have the results back." So I came and they said, "We have good news. You have a 98% and a 99% correlation with 2 professions." I said, "Wow, this is great. I know exactly what I'm going to have to do." I said, "What are the 2 professions?" They said musician and military officer. So they said, "Wait, we've been spending the whole morning trying to figure out what profession you should go into with a Harvard MBA." And I said, "Well, I can solve that for you. And that is, I should join the military band." So on that note, thank you so much again. This is being recorded. So if people want to watch it again, or, you have a friend who, couldn't make it for this time slot, it's going to be available, and it's going to be, I'll let all of you know, but also who registered, but also it's going to be on the YaleCareerPanels.com website. And thank you again to our panelists for the terrific job that you've done.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter.
Thanks a lot. Nice to meet everybody. Nice to see you again, Vivian.
Yes, nice to see you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks.